Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. I'm Josh Byerly. Coming up on September the 17th, Orbital Sciences is getting ready to make some history as it flies its Cygnus cargo vehicle on a test flight to the International Space Station. It's going to be an important mission for everybody here at NASA and also at Orbital Sciences itself. And here to take a look at what's ahead for Orbital and NASA is Mike Suffredini, the International Space Station Program Manager. We're also joined by Alan Lindemoyer, NASA's Program Manager for its Commercial Crew and Cargo Program. We're also pleased to be joined by Frank Culberson, Executive Vice President of Orbital Sciences, a former astronaut and a familiar face around here, as well as Courtney McMillan, who is the NASA Flight Director who will be in charge of the team in Mission Control Houston during the mission. We'll get started with Mike.
Well, good afternoon. Today we've just a couple of hours ago completed our flight readiness review. Uniquely for this particular review, not only is the fact that we're performing or completing the review for the first flight of the Orbital Cygnus vehicle to ISS as part of a demonstration flight, but also we, because of the proximity to the crew changeout, we also conducted our review for the Soyuz changeout in the September timeframe. So often as we come talk to you, we have busy periods that we're going to talk to, and of course this is not unique in this regard. So today we had the HTV departure, HTV-4. It was fully loaded and completed a very successful mission with the ISS and is on its way to a controlled destructive entry with quite a bit of trash off ISS. It was a great flight. Of course, coming up and what we covered in the FRR on the 11th of September, we'll have the return of Pavel, Alexander, and Chris to the steppe of Kazakhstan. And then on the 17th, the planned launch of the Antares vehicle with the Cygnus spacecraft will be on its way to ISS. The plan today is for it to berth on the 22nd of September. And then shortly thereafter, we'll have the launch on the 25th of Oleg, Sergey, and Mike to the International Space Station with a 4-orbit rendezvous plan. So within about 6 hours, they'll be arriving at the International Space Station. And so that's our plan. It's a very busy period, but it's well planned out, and we have margins for many of the contingencies that we normally tend to try to plan for. And so at the review today, we had a thorough discussion about our readiness for both sets of vehicles and working no issues that would prevent the launch of either. And in fact, I would say for the orbital vehicle for the first flight, where we are getting ready to go, we've been known to have 1 or 2 more items open this close to launch, I'll say, and in this case we have very clean FR. We really didn't carry out any significant open work that wasn't already planned, and so in that regard it was a very clean review. There is a couple of things I wanted to talk about with you relative to things that have been going on our orbit or are planned to be done in connection with the program. The first is, as you know, in September timeframe, we conducted 2 U.S. EVAs. The second one was cut short when water was introduced into Luca's helmet. He got back into the ISS, and we got the suit doffed and got him cleaned up. But it did show us something that we hadn't expected was possible in a suit, and that is that you could carry over a significant amount of water into the suit itself without what we call the fan pump Sept shutting down. We had, up until this point, believed that the fan would be flooded and then it would shut itself off once the RPMs went down below a certain limit, which was our experience on the ground. But in fact, what happened in Luca's suit in the microgravity environment was it continued to pump the water into the suit. And as you know, that was caused to terminate the EVA and get the crew back in. And so we've been doing 2 things along the way. One is, of course, working towards the root cause for the anomaly so we can get this suit hopefully repaired and back in the fleet and make sure that the other 2 suits on orbit are ready to support an EVA. and at the same time make sure we have contingency EVA capability. As you know, there's a number of things that can happen on orbit to critical systems, and our way forward when these occur is we send the crew outside to do a repair. There are also one or two contingencies associated with berthing vehicles that we also need to protect for. And so in that respect, we're trying at the same time to make sure we have a contingency EVA capability, and that has two facets. One is to make sure the two suits that we have on orbit do not suffer from the same problem. We refer to those as 3005 and 3010. Those suits have been checked out on orbit and do not show this same anomaly. Although the root cause investigation might cause them to be suspect at some point, today the suits are operating fine. The other piece, and perhaps more importantly, is to learn from this experience and make sure that we have techniques to make sure that we can get the crew in and not expose them to the amount of water that Luca saw, and if we do, that we have ways to mitigate that and get them back in safely. So that was the focus of our discussion today. We essentially have all that work done. It caused us to reassess our hazards that we've had in place for many years with the EMUs and make sure that we have controls to deal with the water, which we've about completed. And our plan has us getting all of our procedures completed and all of our hazards closed again well before the launch of the Cygnus vehicle, which was our plan. So that's going along nicely. Meanwhile, on the EMU itself, there are a couple of potential causes. One was a check valve that we replaced late, well, I'll say during the weekend. We replaced the check valve and the filter associated with that check valve, and checked out the suit, and the suit still had the anomaly, so that was not the cause. We had thought that perhaps the filter on that was contaminated, plugging the flow path of the water and essentially backing up the pump fan Sept, if you will. That turned out not to be the cause of the anomaly. We also changed out a gas trap that had a 2-micron filter with it. We didn't expect that would solve the problem, but it would help us understand if there's any contamination in the water loop that we weren't expecting, and so we did R&R that. The crew could visually tell that the filter on the check valve was not contaminated. We couldn't really inspect the filter on the gas trap. But after R&Ring the gas trap, we went ahead and checked the suit out again. We didn't expect it to solve the problem, and in fact it didn't. So largely that's a good thing. But what we did learn from that is that the filter on the check valve being clean tells you there's not a gross amount of contamination floating around in the water line that we weren't expecting. And so that, in some respects, makes you feel better about the suits that we have on orbit. So the next step and the most likely cause is some sort of plug of the water's ability to get to the pitot tube and the pump fan Sept. It's really kind of a humidity separator. It slings the water around and pushes it to a pitot tube arrangement. It's a similar arrangement we use on the shuttle. In fact, many spacefaring nations use to get humidity out of the water. But these pitot tubes, by their very nature, tend to be very small, and a very minor amount of contamination can cause them to clog up. So we have one of those, a new version of those, one of those units flying up on the 36 Soyuz. So when it arrives, then probably sometime in the October timeframe, we'll change out that component, and I would expect it to solve the anomaly, but if it doesn't, that will just be another step in our process to work through our failure analysis to determine ultimately root cause, and then to make sure that's not an anomaly that we have to worry about with the other two suits. So that's the work in front of us. As I said, contingency capability is really what we need to keep operating the ISS. We really have that done. We'll dot the I's, cross the T's, as I said, before the launch of the Cygnus vehicle. But essentially, we have the capability if we need it today. And so that really was the largest part of the discussion at the FRR today. There was another topic that I'm interested to tell you about. It won't be obvious to you, unfortunately, but it'll be interesting to know this going on. This will be the first opportunity where we ask the crew members post-landing to do some exercises. And really, this is the beginning of the exploration plan, right? You send crews to Mars where they've been traveling for a long time in a microgravity environment, And the question is, when you get there, you don't have a big team of folks like we do every time we recover a crew. The crews just have themselves. And the question is, what is their condition? What can we expect them to do? And it will kind of lead our thinking on how the first few days of any exploration mission would take place to make sure the crew doesn't hurt themselves in the process of landing and getting themselves ready to operate on the surface of a foreign planet. And so this will be the very first time Chris Cassidy is going to participate. They will do it in a tent. It's really pretty simple steps the first time. It's things like, can you sit up by yourself? We'll lay him down prone and see if he can stand himself up. Very simple things to start with, but it's exciting because it really is the first steps where we're using the crew's on orbit condition without the advantage of some of the post-flight conditioning we do for them to see if they're able to take care of themselves. And so this will lead to expansion of this envelope with more crews, and in fact we're looking at this for the one-year crew as well that'll fly in 2015. So it's a pretty exciting step, although again, it won't be obvious to you because it'll go on inside the tent, but it's exciting nonetheless, and I expect as we expand that, then eventually we'll have video images post-landing, because many of the things we'll ultimately try to do we won't be able to do in the confines of the tent, nor will we need to. So that's very exciting, and I just wanted to pass that along so you guys knew it was happening, and we'll let you know how it goes, hopefully with some video or pictures after the exercise is complete. So with that, I've done enough talking. Alan and the Orbital team have been working for quite some time now, getting ready for this demo launch with the Orbital team. Again, like I said, it's been a very, very clean flight readiness review. Quite a bit of work has been done and closed out in preparation, and so I'll hand it off to Alan Lindermore to tell you more about that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So 7 years ago, we started the program with the vision that we would be able to go to a catalog or the internet and order up some cargo delivery services to the International Space Station, similar to what you could do today with the global overnight package delivery. Well, it's not exactly overnight yet, and Orbital could work on the internet order form a little bit, but last year we came very close to seeing that vision become a reality with our first COTS partner, SpaceX, completing the demonstration flight to the station and then providing follow-up missions, operational flights to the space station. So it was been an amazing success, and now here we are today with the opportunity to reinforce that capability with our second commercial partner ready to provide those services to the space station. So it's been a tremendous success, and that vision is coming reality. This flight with Orbital is the second flight. They had a very successful demonstration flight of the Antares vehicle as part of our COTS demonstration program last April. But this time they're going to be demonstrating the full mission with a brand new state-of-the-art cargo-carrying autonomous spacecraft, the Cygnus. You can pull up the first chart. I can tell you about the Space Act agreement we have with Orbital. It was awarded in February of 2007, and then in 2010, right at the end of 2010, we requested and received funding to add in additional milestones which enabled the demonstration flight of the Antares launch vehicle last April, which was very helpful to demonstrating the reliability of the launch vehicles. Our agreement was for the development of a new medium-class rocket and the new Cygnus cargo-carrying spacecraft, and it's launching from a brand-new launch pad at Wallops Island, Virginia. This is really a new way of doing business for NASA. This is a partnership. It's a shared cost. NASA is not paying the total cost for the development of this capability. We became an investor and a technical advisor with Orbital. And instead of verifying a long list of detailed requirements, we put together a pre-negotiated list of milestones that would serve as our checkpoint throughout the execution of the Space Act agreement. And those milestones were rewarded with incremental payments all the way up through this last demonstration mission, which would then close out the Space Act. We made the agreement was for a total of $288 million of NASA contributions, and this last milestone is for a payment of $2.5 million. Next. Looking at the set of milestones here on the next chart, I'm showing both sets that we had in place for both SpaceX and Orbital. These span the entire design cycle from design and development through a series of test and production, and then 2 flight demonstrations with each partner. I should note that Orbital's agreement started a year and a half after SpaceX, and it's culminating now close to a little over a year after the first demonstration flight we saw with SpaceX. So they were not on the same time frame, but it was interesting to see that to develop this type of capability took approximately the same general time frame of 5.5, 6 years. All right, going on to the next chart. Orbital and myself and the program have established a set of mission objectives for this upcoming mission. They do span all phases of the flight, from pre-launch, where Orbital for the first time will be demonstrating the packing and installation of the cargo into the new vehicle. Of course, we'll see the launch, stage 1 operation, stage 2 separation, the insertion of the Cygnus into the proper orbit so it can get on its way to the space station. Of course, this will be the first time now we're seeing the actual Cygnus spacecraft enter that phase of the mission. It'll rendezvous with the station, and then it'll do a series of demonstration maneuvers, very similar to the previous visiting vehicles on the first time visit to the space station with both our international partners and SpaceX. So there will be a series of these demonstration gates, and if all goes well, we'll see the vehicle berth with the station on the 22nd, as Mike mentioned. It'll demonstrate then the unpacking and transfer of the cargo to the station. They're also going to put the disposal cargo back on the vehicle, and then about 30 days later, we'll see the vehicle depart, do its departure maneuvers and reentry and safe reentry. So that spans the series of objectives for the mission, and you'll hear some more about that from Courtney with some details on some of those demonstration maneuvers. So this does represent the culmination of the COTS program after many years. But it's not the end of partnerships with industry. NASA has a number of partnerships across the agency, are doing great things, and we have great ideas in store for future partnerships with industry. In fact, last month we sent out a request for information and received a great number of responses of wonderful ideas on how industry can help NASA meet our goals in continuing the exploration, the human exploration of space. So I am very confident that the end of this program will open some new doors and new partnerships to continue in the future. Certainly hopeful this is a successful mission that will enable Orbital to begin the operational cargo resupply services to serve the station for many years to come. Let me say thanks to Orbital. They've been an absolutely great partner throughout the years. Thanks to my team, Bruce Manners and Kevin Meehan, who have been part of the team from the very beginning, and then all the rest of NASA. We reached back through most all of the NASA centers when needed to provide some information and assistance to Orbital when they asked, and did everything we could do to help make this a very successful program. So we couldn't have done it without everybody's help. So I'll turn it over now to Frank, and he'll give you some more details on the new vehicles we're going to see. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan, and good afternoon to everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here today, especially to be in JSC, but also to be a part of a flight readiness review. It'd been about 13 years since I'd had a real role in one of those, and it was like deja vu all over again, especially with Suffredini up there. But it went very well, and I want to thank everybody who contributed to that, and all of the presentations and all the hard work, and especially Alan, you and your team. Thanks for all the support over the years, and for being there when we needed advice and occasionally a little funding. And since there's less than 1% of the value of it left on it, you know we're not doing it for the money on this one. But I do want to tell you that we've been saving this, but if you'll go on our website on September 16th, we have an overnight delivery form ready for you to fill out. And if you fill it out, we will do our best to deliver to orbit the next day. And we'll try to make that a tradition. But we have some video for you, and if we could go ahead and roll that, I'll show you a summary of the Antares test flight in April. It was very exciting for all of us. You know, it's kind of like, how long can you hold your breath? About 245 seconds, apparently. But the first stage went extremely well, right on target. The second stage and separation all went well. Good burn from the second stage, a little bit less than we had anticipated, but we've corrected for that. And the fairing separated just fine, which was another key test element for us. We now have the Cygnus spacecraft in the horizontal integration facility. These are some shots of it being integrated with the pressurized cargo module in H100 at Wallops. That's where we loaded the cargo, put the entire spacecraft together, delivered it over to the actual Wallops Island, where it was fueled in V-55 and then put in storage in the HIF for the last 3 months while we waited for the LADI mission to finish their processing and to get to the launch pad. We don't work quite that fast, really, but we do have a great team out there, and they've done a terrific job. I believe we also have a little bit of animation of what it'll be like when we do get on orbit, if we could just continue with that. Once the fairing separates, the second stage will carry us into orbit between 200 and 250 kilometers altitude. Once it's burned out, the Cygnus will separate, deploy the solar arrays, activate the spacecraft, and then do its own orbit-raising burns and phasing burns to take it to the International Space Station. We expect to arrive there 5 days later, stop about 10 meters away from the station, be captured by the arm, and attached to Node 2, where the crew will then finish berthing all the mechanisms in the common berthing mechanism, and then open the hatch after a certain number of tests and start unloading the cargo. We're carrying approximately 700 kilograms of cargo on this mission, and we've got 540 kilograms loaded right now. We'll load the rest of it on Saturday, demonstrating both our late load capability as well as the ability to deliver cargo. So it is truly a demonstration mission where we're demonstrating all phases of what we're required to do in our contract, and we're very excited about being able to do that. We'll be attached to the station for approximately 30 days, and then 47 days after deorbit, we expect to launch Orb-1, as we call it, our first contract mission. And so we are deep in preparation for that one already, and going through the testing required, the integration required. We have the PCM at Wallops, and so the spacecraft is moving along, and the core, once we get the one out of the HIF to go to the pad, we'll start integration for that mission. So we've got an assembly line going. We've got spacecraft to cover the first 4 missions in assembly, if not already assembled, and we'll keep it rolling as fast as NASA needs us. The other thing that's important is that the flight readiness review was a culmination of many reviews, both on the spacecraft and on the rocket, evaluating the data we have, evaluating the testing. It's a very rigorous process, which we're very happy to be a part of, but it's in line with Orbital's traditions already. The company has been launching commercial spacecraft for a long time. And I think the launches that we have going on this month are indicative of what's going on in the world, both on the commercial and the government side. We've already mentioned 3 launches here today that are happening just in September alone that are related to either NASA, the International Space Station, or Orbital. We're involved in both the Minotaur launch and the Antares, and delivering both cargo and crew to the station this month. And a lot of exciting things going on. And our international partners also involved with the deorbit of the HTV and the launch of the Soyuz from Kazakhstan. So I think people need to pay attention to what a great job the space programs of the world are doing, despite the pressures of budget, despite the pressures of the economies that are involved. And I think if people could have seen the rigor and discipline and professionalism of the flight readiness review today, they would realize they really do need to be proud of their people in the aerospace industry and in the space program, because they do know what they're doing. They have decades of not just tradition, but experience and professionalism behind them that makes us what we are. And we need to keep that going. We need the next generation to see what we're doing, and we need them to continue what we're doing now so that we can go beyond low Earth orbit. And that's what we're proud to be a part of. We appreciate being a part of the space station program and keeping it inhabited, keeping it going from an experimentation and technology development standpoint, and giving us the ability to go beyond low Earth orbit. One other thing that I want to mention is that Orbital has a tradition going back 25 years or more of naming many of our launch vehicles and spacecraft. And we're going to continue that tradition on this one. In the past, we've named them after employees or maybe even employees' children, former board members, key people, key members of the Orbital family. We're going to expand that tradition a little bit, though still be focused on the Orbital family. And our name for this one is going to reflect a real pioneer in the space program, particularly at Orbital, who was instrumental in us winning the COTS demonstration mission and also winning the CRS. He was an astronaut who flew 4 times in space and who was a fantastic pioneer in EVA hardware development, and who comes from a long family tradition of space exploration. This spacecraft will be named the spaceship G. David Low, in honor of David Low, my friend and classmate, and also a friend to many of us, but also a key Orbital employee for many, many years, who helped the company move into the areas it did in human spaceflight. And he has a lot of admirers there and a lot of people who love him and his family. Joanne and the kids still live in Northern Virginia and still stay in contact with Orbital, and we're hoping they'll be able to be at the launch. But we're very proud to name the spacecraft the G. David Low and carry his tradition and honor him in this way into space. So with that, I'll turn it over to Courtney, and she will give you a lot more details than you may even need on how we're going to get to the space station. But Courtney, thank you to you and your team for all the great training, the extensive long hours in mission control, and we're looking forward to working with you for real.
Well, we have some more long hours in mission control coming up. So I'll give a quick overview of the mission. I think Alan mentioned that folks have been working on the concept of this mission for about 7 years. Some of the operations teams, certainly at Orbital, and a few of the NASA folks as well, have been working the concept of the mission that long. And we're really excited to finally put the paper into play, as it were. We really got started in earnest putting the plans together and developing our training program toward the end of 2010, beginning of 2011, and had our procedures ready for the first round of training about the middle of 2011. So we've been refining it since then, and it's been coming along really well. As Mike said, we had a very clean flight readiness review process. We have had some late actions come up, and we've been able to work through those pretty well. So we're in really good shape for the mission to start on time on the 17th. We're really excited. We've got two USOS crew members will be on board ISS at the time of Cygnus arrival. Luca Parmitano is going to be our prime SSRMS operator for Cygnus capture and for release, and Karen Nyberg will assist him, and she'll also be doing all the common berthing mechanism operations. She'll also be prime for the actual monitoring of the vehicle on its way up. So the two of them will partner through the day. It will be a long day for the two of them. They're prime for all the robotics and mechanism operations, excuse me, which is a little bit different from what we've done, for example, for HTV-4, where we had more ground control. But this way we get to keep the timeline very streamlined, and that allows for some delays during the rendezvous, which is common on demonstration flights on first missions, and we want to be able to absorb that without making the crew day run over long. So the crew will capture Cygnus, and as mentioned, we'll get berth to Node 2 to the Nadir port, same port that HTV departed from today, and then we'll get into transfer operations. The demo objectives for this flight are, of course, the milestones that Cygnus needs to pass before we're allowed to complete the rendezvous and capture. These are very similar. We've got a slide that lists those objectives out. The names will look and the content will look very similar to what we've done for other missions. So for those of you that remember the HTV-1 mission or the Dragon demo last year, a lot of these demos look very similar to those. In the next two slides, because it's more interesting than talking to words, we'll look at some graphics of the rendezvous profile and kind of talk through the different milestones. So on rendezvous day, Cygnus will start out about 4 kilometers below ISS, chasing ISS, so coming up from behind. The first 2 demos on that day are the relative GPS navigation, where we begin the relative navigation relative to ISS, meaning that we're doing calculations between the 2 GPS units on station and on Cygnus. And then we have a targeting demo, that's demo 4, and that's in preparation for the upcoming burns. Then we raise the orbit up to minus 1.4 kilometers, so that's chasing ISS still, and 1.4 kilometers below ISS. At that point, we're checking to make sure we have a good communications link and that the crew is going to be able to command to Cygnus if they need to. And then we do a transition burn where we go from essentially chasing underneath to climbing up the R-bar, coming up directly from below to ISS. And that's the approach burn 3 or the approach initiation burn at that point. So there are a couple of key go-no-go points during that part of the approach, and those are predicated on some of the demo objectives like I talked about. The next milestone, we've got a hold point at 250 meters below ISS, and then if we go to the next slide, we can talk about what the rest of that approach looks like. It's very straightforward. We're just climbing right up the R-bar. We have a couple more demonstrations to complete. The crew is going to execute a retreat and hold demo where Cygnus will climb up a little further, and at about 230 meters, the crew will command it to retreat. That sends it back down to the 250-meter hold point. Then we'll start climbing up again, and the crew will command hold, and we're monitoring the vehicle performance at both of those points. Once we've completed the review of that data, Cygnus will climb up to 30 meters below ISS, and we're evaluating the final performance criteria and making sure that we've gone to single reflector mode on the LiDAR. That happens just outside that point. And then once we pass all the criteria, then we give a go for final approach, and then another go for capture once we get to the capture point. That's a fair amount of detail. There's a lot of coordination, you can imagine, between the teams at that point. We're looking at now an animation. We'll get an animation of the actual capture and install that happens once we get to the capture point. And again, that's going to be installing at Node 2 Nadir. Let's see, I think with that's the amount of detail on the mission I was going to go through. Again, it's a 30-day berthed mission. The departure is going to look very similar to what HTV-4 departure looked like today, although it's going to be in a different attitude, and it's got a slightly different trajectory on release. We're really looking forward, as I said, to getting this mission into action. We've been planning it for a long time, talking about it with our Orbital partners and our JAXA partners as well. And we're very excited to see it come to fruition.
Okay, thanks, Courtney. We're going to take some questions here in Houston now, then we'll go to the phone lines. We've got a handful of reporters on there as well. So we'll start over here with Gina and then work our way back. Go ahead.
Mike, how does Cygnus fit into the stable of vehicles you have providing services to the space station? What's its particular niche?
Well, let's see. The orbital spacecraft is a relatively large pressurized environment, so that's the cargo that it will carry for us. And not to be underlooked, it also provides a similar volume for returning trash, which is something that's hard to keep up with on ISS. As you know, it's when we bring cargo up, it's densely packed and wrapped, and then we get in orbit and we open it all up, and nothing ever gets packed as tight as it ever is going up. And so coming home, it's always hard to cram the same amount of stuff that you had going up, down. So you can get yourself into a deficit with trash given the volumes that you have. So that's an important aspect to what it provides. It's really going to be one of 3 logistics vehicles that supports the USOS on orbit, and one of only 4 when you consider the Progress is the other vehicle. We have one more ATV. We have ATV-4 up there today. ATV-5 is the last in the ATV series. We hope to have HTVs about once a year, once every other year, give or take. So really the workhorse of the fleets for the U.S. segment will be both the SpaceX vehicle and the Orbital vehicle. And we have them lined up to use them, fly them fairly regularly. So it's, this is what we said was going to be the fleet to take care of the U.S. segment, and we need to have it, and we're happy it's coming along.
Yeah.
Frank, what else would you like to see Cygnus do someday besides go to the space station? Anything?
Oh yeah, we think Cygnus has the capability to do a lot more than just deliver cargo to the station. When things develop beyond low Earth orbit and NASA moves further out, depending on where they go and what they're doing, we'd love to be the cargo provider for that also. But we also think the spacecraft, since the service module is based largely on our long duration GEO satellites, could actually operate in space for an extended period of time. And we think provide the ability to carry either a habitation module, cargo module, ECLS, life support systems or whatever, to support exploration way beyond low Earth orbit. And so we're looking at ways to support NASA and helping inform their planning as they go forward. And I mean, we'd be happy to help a mission go to Mars. So we think the spacecraft's going to be very capable, and we can put a lot of different front ends on it.
Okay. Robert?
Hi, Robert from collectspace.com. Frank, you mentioned the tradition that Orbital has in the commercial launch services. Where does this flight fit in terms of achievement or accomplishment, assuming everything goes as planned?
Well, Orbital has been involved in human spaceflight for a long time, but this is the first time we've ever actually launched a dedicated spacecraft carrying cargo for human consumption, basically, in space. So this is a big deal for us. And of course, Antares is the largest rocket we've ever developed, and this will be the first payload that we've ever launched that will rendezvous directly and autonomously with another vehicle of this size. And so it's been a long road to get to this point, and a lot of development required. But similar to what I said about the FRR, we've got equally dedicated people at Orbital who took this very seriously and put a lot of effort into making sure our design is robust and reliable and is going to work. And we reviewed it extensively, led by Mr. David Thompson, our CEO, who signed off on it last week that we're ready to execute this mission.
And can you talk, are there any other milestones between now and the 17th in terms of like a wet dress rehearsal or other?
We have a launch dress rehearsal on the 12th. We'll have the launch readiness review on the 15th, along with Wallops Flight Facility and Mars, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, to assess our readiness and get the go from the FAA, who also is licensing the launch, and from Wallops itself, who runs the center, Mr. Bill Robel. And those are the big milestones, but from an integration standpoint, that happens every day going forward. We actually have rotated the Cygnus 90 degrees, and it's starting its integration to the upper stage today. We'll finish that. We'll do our final flight sim to make sure everything is connected, everything's playing together between the spacecraft and the rocket. And then we'll do the late load on Saturday, put the fairing on the next day, and then roll out 4 days prior to launch. And so things are starting to come together, so to speak. And we'll be ready to roll it out, erect it on the pad, and then launch about 4 days after that.
All right, Jim.
Okay, 3 questions. First, congratulations on getting to this point, and I appreciate the work that went into it for everybody. For fun, what are you going to put on board? Are you got any surprise packages for the crew? Any personal kits?
If I told you what they were, there wouldn't be surprises, would there? You won't tell anybody?
You do have that sort of, like a big roll of cheese or something.
We don't have a big roll of cheese, but we have some nice greetings and things.
In terms of down cargo, is it mostly trash, or do you have anything important coming down?
We categorize it as a disposable cargo. Others may call it trash.
Well,
we think it's important.
Recyclable. And last, in terms of other activities beyond ISS delivery, you're keeping your eye on things. What sort of modifications would you imagine, or have you looked at them, to allow docking of this vehicle to someone else's space station? For example, the future Chinese or a future Bigelow station, which will not have RMS. What kind of modifications would you see to allow this to actually mechanically dock as opposed to being grappled?
Well, we have to change the location of the sensors, such as the LiDAR, and probably add some robustness to their GNC. And then we'd, of course, have to replace the common berthing mechanism with a docking mechanism, and then probably evaluate the loads much more carefully from a docking standpoint. And I think we'd probably still want to have a PVGF on there as a backup capability. But there's no reason the spacecraft itself couldn't control to that type of an environment.
No reason the spacecraft itself could not control to a docking.
My program manager, Frank DeMauro, is right there, and he's nodding that our GNC can handle that, right?
I'm going to quote you on it, but I think that's good.
Okay. In the back there. Go ahead.
TJ Hall to the Galveston County Daily News. Frank, Alan mentioned earlier that this is a partnership, and both the company and NASA contributing to the funds. We know $288 million coming out of NASA. What percentage of that total? And as you look down the line of going commercial, you got to make it feasible for your company. How much of a percentage are y'all putting into this cost-wise?
More than that.
Where do you see it down the line of being able to, where that partnerships, or as you do these things, you can start having a return on that investment though?
Well, we are hoping that when we get not too far into the CRS contract, that things will start looking profitable on paper. But it's something that is going to take a while to actually show a true calculated return on investment over the long term. However, we think it's worth it because we expect the space station to be there for a long time. We expect NASA to need cargo delivery for a long time, and we expect to be able to reduce our cost over the long term as we get more into a production mode with the spacecraft. We also expect to increase our capability, which will make it more valuable to NASA and other users in terms of being able to lift more cargo or stay on orbit longer or do more things. And so we think that this is a really good investment, both by NASA and us. And by the way, we really appreciate the investment and partnership that we've received from the NASA team. The Allen's office and also the Space Station Program Office have been very proactive in making sure that we're able to continue to move forward at a reasonable pace, and that we get the technical as well as contractual support we need in keeping things going. We've gotten a lot of help from NASA headquarters in that regard, and also from even some of the political leaders in Maryland and Virginia in helping support this and make sure it happens. And of course, the state of Virginia, through the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, has invested in this, as has Wallops itself as a spaceport. And so it's a multifaceted investment, multifaceted program, but we have the commercial side of it, and we intend to make a commercial go of it.
All right, Mark.
Thanks. I had two for Mark Carreau for Aviation Week. And the first is, could you describe the content of the cargo? I'm not sure whether it's a combination of stuff or, just clothes or just food, but and sort of why you selected what you selected for this flight, because the mass is probably lower than what Orbital could take on a full mission, and also the launch period or the number of days you have to launch if you have to take a break.
Let's see. It's primarily food on board, and as with demo flights, we tend to not necessarily put critical cargo, although the crew would debate with me whether food was critical or not. So that's typically what we have done, and so that's what we've chosen to do this time. We also, for demo flights, we don't typically fill them up because you want the margin for the system to operate within. Also, as a demo flight, you're trying to figure out that it's not insignificant, the unloading and filling back up and strapping things down. So on a new vehicle, you're trying to wring that out and make sure you understand it. And so there's a lot of reasons why we give ourselves some margin with the demonstration flight and don't necessarily load them all the way up. We will fill it with all the trash that we have on board. if we have much. HTV is departed very full, so I wouldn't expect to fill up the Cygnus vehicle, but it will be there 30 days, and we can generate quite a bit of trash in 30 days. So it will be filled with as much trash as we have available to fill it with. There's no limitation on that.
And the launch period, the number of days you have?
Let's see. Frank can tell you how many days in a row he can be ready to launch. From a berthing perspective, we can take. They can launch and berth to ISS 1, 2, 3, I think 4 days in a row, and then we have to stand down for to let the Soyuz crew arrive, and then we would pick back up sometime after that. So we have it lined up for I think 4 opportunities before we have to stand out. Now Frank will tell you about launch, but their plan, which I completely support, is get in orbit. We got lots of margin to loiter. Get in orbit, and then we'll take you whenever we got the crew all settled down. But I'll let Frank answer that.
As far as the launch time frame, it opens on the 17th. We can technically go all the way up until the 29th with the licensing we have on the flight termination system, and then we would have to recertify that, which would require going back to the hangar. The team right now is at Wallops is supporting the Laddie launch. It's also a commercial launch out of the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, so it's a lot of the same people. Once they launch Friday night on the 6th, then they require approximately 11 days to turn around, which sets our launch date on the 17th. And then they've got crew duty concerns that play in at some point where they'll have to eventually take a day off and refresh the crew, which occurs around the 21st. So we've got pretty much a week or so of uninterrupted time, and we can make that 2 weeks depending on how things work out if we're dealing with weather issues or whatever. We actually have a window that goes all the way through October, as I understand, if we really need it. Though if we launch on certain days, if the Soyuz is coming, we would have to loiter. And we actually did the calculation when we thought we might launch at a different time frame. We could actually stay on orbit for 2 or 3 months on this particular mission prior to rendezvous if we needed to. Now we're hoping we don't get into that kind of situation. But there's a couple of things that drive that. One is the low cargo load on this one gives us a lot of fuel margin. And the other is we don't really have any perishable cargo on this one. On future missions, we'll probably have cargo that needs to get there within about a week, and so we wouldn't be able to loiter indefinitely on those.
Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. James Dean with Florida Today. Are you there?
I am, thank you. I've had one for Mr. Suffredini and one for Mr. Culbertson, if possible. For Mr. Suffredini, could you explain your planning for who flies the next CRS mission and when? Obviously, probably somewhat dependent on how this demo flight goes, and then also I wonder if it's relevant that SpaceX is about to launch a new version of its rocket for the first time, and you know, whether that's impacting your scheduling of their next flight.
Not to be too flippant, whoever is ready will get to come to ISS next. We have a December opportunity available where we would like to have a cargo vehicle arrive. If you look at our manifest today, we actually slate both Orb 1 and SpaceX 3. As you mentioned, SpaceX is getting ready for their first 1.1 version of their Falcon 9 vehicle to launch over on the West Coast. And we had expected for them to have 2 or 3 launches before that launch vehicle is used for the enhanced Dragon. There have been quite a bit of work done to get the launch vehicle ready, and also the Dragon has had some modifications done to it. So I wouldn't expect them to be really ready in the December or even probably January timeframe. So if Orbital is ready to launch in December, it'll be the next vehicle after the demo flight.
So I'm sorry, just a quick follow-up on that. If they're not ready, I mean, do you have any issues in terms of resupply and logistics if you're looking to like February timeframe or something potentially?
No, we do not. One of the things we do at every review is we look at our logistics. We're doing very well on logistics. Interestingly, because of the amount of crew time that we'll be able to make available for research this a set of increments, and we generally look at 2 increment periods together. This set of increments, we're going to have on average, if everything goes well, about 43 hours a week of research. And that's about 8 hours more than we have committed to. At that rate, we actually will consume research to a point where we reach a level where we won't be able to do 43 hours anymore in about the middle of December time frame. Now, what that just means is we'll be doing research at a slightly lower crew rate, but we continue to do research because a lot of the research doesn't require crew help in the first place. But that's really the shortest pole in the tent, if you would, relative to logistics on board ISS, which is pretty phenomenal. So we're in good shape relative to all the normal things that you watch for. We're up into 2015 in many of the consumables, and 2014 for the rest. So we're not hurting in that respect. What we do have to get to as a program, and we've been talking to both providers, is that we've got to get into a cadence, though. It's time for us really to start having flights on a regular basis and expect that the next one will be there when we get it lined up within a month or so. And so I'm looking to this next year, 2014, to be the year where we really settle in, where we have regular orbital flights and regular SpaceX flights, and that we actually see them, give or take within a few weeks of when we expect to have them there or need them there. And that's important because where we need to get is to reduce the amount of mass we have for logistics, which we can do if we have a consistent supply chain, and really fill these vehicles up with research. And so that's the big transition we have to make in the next year, now that we have orbital flying as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Culbertson, if you are able to successfully close out this COTS program, I wondered if you could just comment, someone who was with NASA a long time and now Orbital, on the significance of this program overall in sort of changing the model for how NASA does things, as Alan discussed, and how, to what extent do you think it could be applied more broadly beyond just ISS resupply or crew flights? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think that the COTS program is a real pathfinder in how we're going to commercialize certain aspects of spaceflight. It was, as Alan said, a co-investment between NASA and Orbital in developing the spacecraft. The rocket was already being developed on Orbital funds, on our IRAD, and was then brought into the design and the solution. But the spacecraft itself was pretty much a co-investment and a cooperative effort in terms of making sure that we had the right design, the right systems, the right redundancy, et cetera. But really focused on delivering cargo on a regular and a commercially based principle of delivering the service when it's ordered up. And that's what we intend to do. And I think that model can be extended to a number of things. NASA and three other companies are trying to do that in commercial crew now with a similar model. The thing that made it work, there were two things that made it work. One was the commitment by both sides that this really was going to happen, that we were going to develop this capability, and that we were going to do it right. And secondly, that there was going to be a market for it after we developed it. Now, we know that there's not 10 customers coming forward right now asking for cargo delivery to low Earth orbit, but maybe 50 years from now there'll be 1,000, who knows? But well, maybe not in 50 years. But right now there's only one customer, but developing this capability for both us and SpaceX proves that you can have a commercial service that can keep something as complicated and as important as the space station going on a commercial basis. Providing those services rather than NASA buying the spacecraft, buying the rockets, being responsible for all that goes with it, and then doing it with two companies so that you have some redundancy and some backup, I think gives them both the flexibility and the reliability that they're going to have cargo delivered by many different ways. And I think that you can take that model into many other different parts of spaceflight, beyond even human spaceflight, in terms of providing services to companies that want to actually do business in space. And I think that's what a number of companies in this country right now are trying to go out on a limb to do. And I think you're going to see more of it over the next 10 to 20 years. So I think it was a great experiment, and we're just about to finish that and turn it into something real.
Okay, let's go to Stephen Clark.
Hi, just one quick question for Frank. Just finished the of the Antares.
Can you?
Yeah, can you speak up again, Stephen?
Yeah, just one quick question for Frank. Just wanted to ask the day of the rollout of the Antares at Wallops.
Right now, the rollout is scheduled for the 13th, and it'll take about 2 hours. Yeah. It's not a real long trip, but it's not real fast. We have road signs now to make sure you don't get lost.
All right, is that it, Stephen? Okay.
That's it, thank you.
All right, let's go to Irene Klotz.
Thanks, Josh. First, for you, Frank, is there a day-to-day flip if there's any problems with money or at some point?
Telephone issues. I'm not sure if it's with you or if it's with the entire phone line, so just hang tight 1 second. Let me go to Dan Leone and see if we can hear him. Dan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How do you guys hear me?
We're good.
Okay, I've got two questions, which I guess are going to be Frank questions. Frank, right now, excluding the one rocket and capsule pairing that will be used for the final COPS demo, how many rockets worth of hardware, if you will, including all the engines and that, have you got at Wallops? And a second unrelated question, back in April when we were sitting around for the upteenth briefing after a delay, you mentioned that this vehicle for this flight had already been fueled and sealed, and I'm curious whether it just stayed there fueled and sealed up until now when it was being integrated, or if you ever opened it at any point to tweak something. Thanks.
As far as the spacecraft, we kept it stationary and sealed until we got a little bit closer to launch. We did open it up to make some minor mechanical modifications to it and to get it ready for flight. And then now, about a week ago, we began that activity in earnest with the full team, and started. Pardon me?
Oh no, sorry.
And began the integration effort, which resulted in the breakover yesterday and the integration today. And that all went very well. It didn't move, it didn't leak, and nobody touched it as far as I know. So it's in good shape. And as far as the amount of hardware that we have, I believe we have 3 cores at Wallops. We have at least 1, maybe 2 upper stages ready to go, but we don't ship them until we get closer to launch because they're fully fueled solids. And the next fairing, I know, is just about ready to be shipped. Everything for COTS Orb 1, which will hopefully go in December or January, is finished. It's just a matter of getting it to Wallops. And as I said, the cores are already there. We have engines for the next flight and the one after that, and the others are in process or about to go through in processing at Stennis and at Sacramento. So we've got everything lined up easily for 3 flights from a rocket standpoint. For Cygnus, we have the one that is being integrated today. We have another one ready to be shipped to Wallops to join the pressurized cargo module, which is also already there. We have 3 more in various phases of assembly at our satellite manufacturing facility in Dulles. And they vary from going through final assembly and testing to building up the prop system, with components for the next one probably arriving in a couple of months. The pressurized cargo modules, they are working on Orb 8 at Thales Alenia. They've been great partners in this and great suppliers. And as you know from the work they did in supporting International Space Station components, that they know what they're doing. And the last one is being welded up, and others are ready to be shipped. And they've been kind enough to store them there until we have room for them at Wallops. So they've stayed ahead of the curve on that. Other components such as solar arrays, fuel tanks, et cetera, we are working on Orb 4. Others have been delivered and are ready to go. So we are working as far ahead as makes sense from both a production and financial standpoint to try to stay ahead. And if we're asked to fly at a higher rate than we're currently planned to, we'll be able to do that.
Okay, let's go back and try Irene Klotz one more time, see if the phone line's cleared up. Irene, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can kind of make it out. Let's try it.
Okay, thanks. For Frank, is there if there's any problems with the LADI launch, is it a day-to-day slip with Antares, or at some point would Antares go ahead?
I think what you asked was how LADI's launch date will affect our ability to launch. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and if there's any time that you would then go ahead of LADI.
Right now, my understanding is that LADI's window is 30 minutes a day from the 6th through the 10th. And if they delay, that will delay our launch day for day, approximately. They may be able to get some efficiencies out depending on when it happens and how it happens. But pretty much we're planning on just slipping day for day as LADI does if that's necessary. And we hope it's not, because that's also one of our launch vehicles. And we would like to get off the pad as soon as possible. They do have another short window sometime later in September, and then possibly a window in October, and I don't know what's been determined in terms of priorities on that, Mike. I don't know if you and Mr. Gerstenmaier have discussed that or not.
Not in detail yet.
But we'll work it real time if we get to that point. But we're optimistic that LADI will go on the first or second try, and we'll get off in the middle of September.
Thanks. Then I have another question for either Mike or Alan. Is it the intention of NASA to keep the commercial cargo resupply separate from commercial crew, or at some point do you anticipate that you won't have a need for both unmanned and manned cargo ship, unmanned and manned capsule?
Well, so your question is NASA heading in a direction where we combine commercial crew program and commercial cargo program? Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
Well, the way we've looked at it up until now is that the contracts that we have are for a service, and so as a program we went off to procure a service. In the past we had programs, but the programs were responsible for the development and delivery of a spacecraft and the operation of the spacecraft and the logistics associated with the spacecraft, and et cetera, et cetera. And so you had a need for a separate program. In the case of the commercial cargo or commercial resupply program or services that we procure them directly from a contractor, and we don't have a NASA entity managing that effort per se. We do have a part in an organization inside my program that looks at the verification work for each flight, and we'll have that work done for each flight. But that's kind of normal work for the ISS program to do anyway. So this is part of the shift in a services contract. So as far as the commercial services go, no, for cargo, I don't expect that to go outside the program. We'll continue to procure the service as we get to the point where we need more flights. We would expect to go out similarly and ask for quotes from vendors for that service. You know, Alan's effort that he talked about was all part of a Space Act agreement where NASA kind of worked with a couple of providers to have a service for us to procure. But once we got to that point, then really we are procuring a service and we don't need another program to manage it. Commercial crew is different in that, again, well, we're really trying to figure out how to do the commercial crew program. What's the contract relationship going to look like? How's the development go? Things like that. So we have a program specifically to do that job. If and when we get to the point where it's a services, that's the part. As an agency, we haven't really discussed how we plan to do that. Will the ISS program go out and procure that service, or will the nature of humans flying in space drive us to continue to have a separate program to manage that services aspect of that contract? And that is forward work for us to decide.
Okay, one more on the phone lines. Is Patrick Host there? Pat, are you there? Okay, any follow-ups here in Houston? All right, that's going to wrap it up for us. Taking a look at our programming that's ahead for launch coverage. We will begin with video B-roll at 9:30 a.m. Central Time on the 17th, and 15 minutes after that at 9:45 a.m. Central Time. That is when our live coverage will begin, leading up to the launch itself, which right now is at 10:16 a.m. Central Time, 11:16 a.m. Eastern Time. And of course, we'll have live coverage of all that here on NASA television. Then on the 22nd, if all goes according to plan, the rendezvous coverage will begin at 3:30 a.m. Central Time, bright and early in the morning or late at night, depending on how you look at it. And then we'll stay on the air all through the robotic operations and until the Cygnus vehicle gets actually installed on the International Space Station, and we'll have a news conference shortly thereafter, sometime after lunch that day. Of course, for all the latest, just log on to the NASA website at www.nasa.gov/orbital or /station. We'll be sure to put all of these briefing materials, all the charts that you saw here, and all the video itself we'll put up there shortly, either today or tomorrow. So we will see you back here on the 17th. We want to thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. Have a good day.